So for a long time, I thought letting go of people was a negative thing to do. Like I saw the success of relationships that I had in my life as a direct reflection of my success as a person. So if I had a relationship that was failing, like it could just be a friendship, not necessarily romantic, I took that on as a personal failure in my mind. So you can kind of see how this unhealthy thought, so that really led to this unhealthy need to constantly mend relationships or friendships. So if I saw a relationship starting to weaken, even if it was just a natural fade, I would, get really anxious and feel like I had to change something. Even if the person was, even if it was very clear that the relationship was one-sided and the person wasn't kind of like holding up their end, I would just always feel the need to rectify it, and I just felt like it was because I wasn't doing enough. I also fell into the trap of prioritizing the wellness of other people rather than myself. So this really made it hard for me to enforce boundaries that I had in my life. This really made it hard for me to enforce boundaries because sometimes I would try to enforce boundaries and someone would react negatively, or they would get offended or just upset, and then I would just kind of back off to not make them feel uncomfortable. So again, my focus was to like my again my focus was more so their comfort levels rather than my well-being and my happiness. And I had a specific friend that I had been friends. And then in college, I remember I was talking to actually my boss at the time about a friend that I've known since high school, that I was really struggling on deciding whether or not I still wanted her in my life. And the issue was she always felt, and the issue was she always praised me, and she always told me how appreciative she was of having me as a friend or an ally in her life. But I was always confused because her actions didn't really match her words. She would kind of always do subtle jabs towards me, and she would kind of always do subtle jabs and say things that made me really uncomfortable and question, why would you do that if I'm truly your friend and if you truly care about me? For instance, once she told me there are times that she would force herself to not laugh at things that I would say, even if she found them funny, because she didn't want me to think that I was funny, or she didn't want me to think that I was that funny, because she thought if I thought I was too funny, I wouldn't want to be her friend anymore. But I would excuse a lot of red flags that, like obviously that's a red flag, because I would recognize that she had a lot of struggles that she overcame in her life or that she was facing in her life. So I would kind of make that excuse for her. Like, it makes sense that she's a toxic person because she's had been exposed to toxic situations in her life, rather than expecting her to take ownership of her decisions, rather than expecting for her to take ownership of her actions and decisions. Anyways, during this rant towards my boss, um, my boss listened to all that I had to say in terms of like how she had recently hurt me, but I was conflicted because I didn't want to give up on a person. You know, I don't like giving up on people, and I kept explaining that to her. She just said, you know what? Just stop for a second and ask yourself this. What if all the time and effort you're pour- what if all the time and effort that you're pouring what if you took all the time and effort that you're currently pouring into her as a person? What if you took that and you poured it into yourself instead? And that really made me think, because usually the advice that I would get from people when I would describe the situation was obviously stop being friends with her. But I felt like they didn't fully understand the responsibility I felt for helping this person out of the negative part of their life. But this advice of asking myself, what if I took that energy and poured it into myself? I realized that I was prioritizing her over myself to the point where I was sacrificing my own well-being and happiness to try to help someone that wasn't even really interested in helping themselves. I would offer her a lot of advice, or I would help her, I would try to help her reach her goals, but she would never even meet me at least halfway. She wouldn't even meet me a quarter of the way. Like, I felt like I was doing more to better her life than she was doing for herself. So being asked, what if I took that time and effort and energy and poured it into myself instead, I immediately thought I would be so much more successful than I am now. And I realized I shouldn't feel guilty for wanting to be happy and wanting to live, a life filled with happiness. So that's when I realized that in order to get to that part of my life, it was necessary for me to cut her out, because she wasn't interested in she wasn't really interested in anything that served my best interest. She just wanted me to stay at a level of happiness where I was her only best friend. Like, she wanted me to be dependent on her, essentially. And again, I made a whole bunch of excuses of why she might be that way, rather than recognizing that she was just a toxic person, to me at least, because she would rather stifle my growth than support it out of fear of losing me from her life. However, that was not an easy thing for me to do. She was in my life for, off the top of my head, probably 6 or 7 years, and we had a lot of good times together. And even though she did bring a lot of negativity to my life, there were many times where I had no one to talk to, that she was there, and it felt like she understood what I had to say. There were many times where we just sat around doing stupid things. Like, we would hang out at Walmart. Like, every time we hung out, she had a Walmart across the street from where she lived, and we would go there at like 3 o'clock in the morning doing silly things. So we have so many good memories, and the fact that I was able to have so much fun with her doing little things made it difficult for me to let go, because I thought, like, how can I let go of a person that I can have so much fun with and I can be myself with so easily? Like, that's hard for me to find. So I was kind of just accepting what I had, because I thought I couldn't get better, and I wonder if a part of me thought I didn't deserve better. But whenever I have doubt about whether or not I should accept her back into my life, or whether or not I should reach out to her, I just remember that question that my boss asked me of, what if you took the time and energy you pour into her as a person, what if you pour that into yourself instead? And it just reminds me of having her in my life would drain me of that energy. Like, I always felt tired and depressed and just filled with doubt whenever I spent an extended period of time with her, or whenever I would introduce her back into my life and start talking to her again. It was the same pattern where it just really stifled my growth. And at the end of the day, I just had to decide that my happiness and well-being is more important than having fun times every now and then. I hope this video has helped you. And please, and in the comments below, please share with me if you have any experience with toxic friends and what your experience of letting them go out of your life was like.